Hi, I'm Nick Upton. I'm here with Jim Haslem. We're down here at RFDC 2016 talking a little about rent metrics. Jim, you've been working in rent metrics and negotiating leases for 30 years. Now you're at your own firm, CS Advisors. Tell me why you think rent is the most important factor in a restaurant's success.
Well, in 2008, I had the opportunity to see the data for several companies, several restaurant concepts that had filed for bankruptcy under Chapter 11 of the Bankruptcy Code. And I had access to a lot of data, and I've sifted through the data looking for patterns. What were the factors that led to restaurant success or failure?
Yeah.
And I was struck by the predominant impact of the rent. And based on that data, I concluded that the rent is the single most important factor in determining the success or failure of a restaurant.
Okay. So what kind of metrics should a restaurateur look for when they're looking at that rent line?
Well, first of all, it's important for the restaurant concept to develop the right metrics for its concept and its locations. And so it's not necessarily the same from restaurant to restaurant or restaurant type to other restaurant type. So having said that, I like what I call a top-line metric, and this is the predominant metric in the industry, which is the occupancy costs as a percentage of sales. And so what you're doing is comparing occupancy costs, which is broken down into rent, the operating expenses that the tenant pays to the landlord, and also real estate taxes. So those occupancy costs are put in the numerator of the fraction. The denominator is your gross sales.
Okay.
And if the percentage is too high, it's a very compelling argument that the restaurant could be facing losses or even risk of failure.
Interesting. So it's been an incredibly hot market, as everyone in the restaurant industry has seen. What can a restaurateur do to kind of make sure the rent makes sense in this market?
Well, it's very difficult because the rents have gradually increased from the Great Recession. It's been a landlord's market. The tenants aren't able to change the market forces, but should at least be aware of where they fit within that market. Where is their target metric as compared to the market rent? And that requires active management of the real estate portfolio, which means to review and analyze on a regular, ongoing basis all of the leases in your portfolio. Run the metrics. How are they performing? Rate, rank those locations, and do it quarterly. And see what the trends are. And through that process, you'll see your top performers, your middle performers, and the bottom performers. And those bottom performers should be focused on, and the goal is to develop a strategy for solving the problem, which often leads to negotiations with the landlord.
Okay. So you've talked about fact-based negotiations in the past and how those can help when you're negotiating, but what are some general guidelines for negotiating a bad lease in that lower quartile?
Many key factors, but the first of which is to do your homework, understand the lease, understand the metrics, and then approach the landlord with a fact-based, reality-based argument that lays out the problem and then also lays out a potential solution.
Okay.
So it's fact-based, solution-oriented. Bluffing is, in my view, not effective. And also being careful with the time of the landlord so that you're respectful of the landlord's time. And I think having an intermediary, frankly, a third party who's detached from the history and the emotion can also be very helpful.
Wonderful. And where do you see the market going? It seems like it's going to be hot for a while. What do you think is going to happen, headwinds, tailwinds, in the next year or two?
Well, the rents have continued to escalate throughout the country, some areas more intensively than others. But the rents have escalated. Some of us would have thought we would have hit saturation or high point by now, but we have not. And so I think over the next year, we may see a high point in certain of the most expensive markets. And at that point, restaurants may be unable to come into those markets because the rents are simply too high. And that suggests that in the trophy markets, the most expensive markets within the country, in order to bring in a restaurant, landlords may actually have to offer rents that are below market.
That's a great point. Well, thanks so much for your time, Jim.
Thank you.
We're here at RFDC 2016 talking about rent. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.